All right, good afternoon. Buenas tardes, everyone. Apologies for the late start. We're working through some technical difficulties, but I appreciate everyone's patience in joining us today for the Disadvantage Advisory September 20th, 2024 meeting. I'm Roman Partia Lopez, Chair, and will be facilitating today's meeting. Before we do roll call, just a quick reminder, Senate Bill 544 requires members of the DACAG who are participating remotely to remain visible on camera. If you have challenges with internet connectivity during this meeting preventing you from being visible to the other members and the public, you must publicly announce the reason you are off camera as soon as possible. With that, we'll proceed with roll call. I'll read the names and then state your presence. Abimael will not be joining us today. Chelsea.
Present.
Hey, Chelsea, good to see you. Curtis will not be joining us. Elena.
Here.
Hi, Elena, good to see you. Fred.
Here.
Hey, Fred, good to see you. Julia.
Here.
Hey, Julia, thank you. Roman is here. Sarah is not joining us today. Sanait's not joining us either. And Stephanie is also not joining. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we do not have a quorum for today. So we will not be taking on any voting items since we only have 5 participants today. Okay, so with that, we'll then move on. Oh, before moving on to item number 2, Sarah, who is our secretary and generally helps support note-taking, isn't here today. So if possible, I would like to ask for some support in helping taking notes during the meeting. I know Mona will also be helping, but if someone from the DACAG could also help with that, really appreciate it. So someone willing to help us out with that?
I can go ahead and do that if somebody reminds me how I'm supposed to do that.
Thanks, Elena. If you go back to Sarah's recent email with the packet for today, there is a PDF, I believe it's a PDF or a Word document for notes, and you could just use that template. Right? All right, thank you so much, Elena, really appreciate it. Okay, then moving on to item number 2, general public comment. Turn it over to agency staff to provide reminders and instructions.
Thanks, Roman. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zara Jamshed, support staff for the DACAG and regulatory analyst at the California Public Utilities Commission. Supporting us today are my colleagues Dorothy Morimi, Ryan Young, and Jacob Willman, as well as legal support from both agencies, Vanessa Baldwin and Renee Webster-Hawkins. A few reminders. This meeting is being recorded and is being held both remotely and in person in San Francisco. Roman, as facilitator, will conduct roll call votes. Actually, no, we're not voting on anything. We've enabled WebEx's closed captioning feature to make this meeting more accessible. So to use the closed captioning, you can press the bottom left CC icon. And when the captions are turned on, attendees can see 3 dots with the more option of the caption box to view captions and highlights. For public comment, this is an opportunity for attendees to give comments regarding any matters related to the DACAG or today's agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and we'll alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those on WebEx, you can use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. And for folks joining by phone, you can press *3 to raise your hand and then *6 to mute and unmute. For anyone here in person, please raise your hand and we'll call on you. The chat feature is not available to attendees. It's solely for panelists to ask technical, procedural, or legal support. So do we have any public comments in the room? Are there any raised hands online? Seeing none, back to you, Roman.
All right, thank you so much. We'll move on now to item number 3, opening remarks by the CEC and CPUC leadership. First, I'd like to acknowledge the commissioners that are joining us today, and we welcome you all to say hello and give some brief remarks if you'd like. So we'll start first with Commissioner Monahan. And I believe Commissioner Monahan was having some issues signing on as well. So we'll come back to Commissioner Monahan. Commissioner Gallardo?
Commissioner Gallardo is not in attendance today.
All right, thank you, Dorothy, for that. And then Brian Early, Chief of Staff for Commissioner McAllister.
Hi, everyone. I'm subbing for my boss, Commissioner Andrew McAllister. So my name is Brian Early. I'm his Chief of Staff. Thank you all for putting this together. Really appreciative to be in attendance. Really appreciate the DACAG's continued and valued input and steering function for our policies. And I'm excited to hear later on CEC staff's update on the development of building performance standards. I also just wanted to give a brief plug for a public-facing summit we're going to be putting on in March of 2025 on building electrification. So it's following up for an event that we did last year working with EPRI, the Electric Power Research Institute, to try to accelerate adoption of heat pumps in the state. Equity will continue to be a core theme of next year's summit. So we'll be sending out a save the date shortly for that, and would really appreciate the DACAG's involvement as we develop the agenda and look to accelerate policy in this area. So thank you very much for allowing me to participate.
Thank you, Brian, and appreciate the notice now, even if this will happen in March. I have seen that some workshops are happening, right, related to this matter, like kind of that more on the ground meetings with folks, maybe not necessarily led by the CEC, but I'm seeing CARB also hosting some related discussions around building electrification and water heater discussions.
Yeah, there's a lot of interagency collaboration happening here. So yeah, really hoping to help condense and get sort of public input holistically in this upcoming event. So yeah.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on then to the CPUC, Commissioner Hogg.
Thank you. Really pleased to be here. And I know we're through the building decarb proceeding, we're collaborating with the CEC, and we've been having some discussions about looking at some listening sessions and collaborating and coordinating with CEC to make sure that we're efficient in how we do it and trying to get as many agencies there as at one time as possible. So those discussions are ongoing as we're moving into this fourth phase of the building decarb proceeding, which Commissioner Douglas is my Bagley Keene partner. So we'll be working together on that as well. I had the opportunity earlier this week on Wednesday to spend the day down in Wilmington with a number of environmental justice groups to just experience what's going on down in that community. And that was a tremendous opportunity, and appreciate all of the time and effort it took to put that tour together. And I'm looking forward to further discussions. We talked a lot about, are there ways that the PUC can help CBOs understand our process more and make it easier to participate in our proceedings, and how to brainstorm what that could look like. So I know we've talked about that with this group and are continually looking to see how we can do that. One of the stops that we did take was to a SOMA project and a low-income affordable housing development that had the solar and batteries ready to go, but it still hadn't been interconnected through the utility. And so that's something, this is, I think, the third facility I've seen where it's, taken, 18 months to maybe 2 years. And so I think that's something that we at the PUC need to follow up on, especially for lower income communities that may be paying interest on the financing, since the incentive money doesn't come, it's a reimbursable funding. So that's a concern, as well as the fact that the residents aren't getting the benefit of the project till it's interconnected. So it was a great opportunity to meet with community members, to see the community, firsthand experience the industry that's in the area and the pollution that folks are living with, as well as the difficulties just in moving around the community with the rail lines and all of the diesel trucks. So I look forward to further trips and discussions in that regard. And then also we have a number of data working groups that we're doing in our avoided cost calculator proceeding, or DACE proceeding, where we're looking to fill data gaps to hopefully be able to make it easier and more efficient to be looking at demand side opportunities on the system. So I would say if anyone's interested in that, you can reach out to my office or to our staff to get more information about those working groups. And again, looking forward to the discussion today.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, and thank you for sharing some of the learnings from that tour in Wilmington. I know other commissioners have also been doing tours, both PUC and Energy Commission. It'd be great to, at some point to kind of figure out, how that feedback is then utilized, right, to continue to guide, right, the development and updates of some of the work that we're doing, some of the proceedings, some of the implementation, given that, I think we continue to face barriers, both with like implementation and the interconnectedness that you mentioned, but then even just thinking about participating, right? And the fact that the grants that we had, some of that funding was cut. And then it's also been, I think, at times difficult for community groups to access the funding itself. So maybe some larger discussion that we could have at some point to figure out how we take that information and then help, share it out and embed it into either comments or into the proceedings and dockets that we're active in.
Yeah, we definitely need to do that. And I think we've got some creative ideas that could work. And we're trying some of those out in our tribal OIR proceeding right now. And so would like to have a broader discussion with the CBOs about how maybe that could translate over into our general rulemakings.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Douglas.
Well, it sounds like a really great tour that you got to go on, Commissioner Houck, and thanks for reporting on it here. And I'm looking forward to today's discussion and looking forward to all the work we have in front of us. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. I believe still Commissioner Monahan hasn't joined, so we'll proceed. And then when she does join, we'll make sure to pause and turn it to her to see if she has any remarks to share with us. Is there any other leadership that would like to provide opening remarks here? Okay, hearing none, then we'll close these opening remarks. Thank you, everyone, for that. We'll move on to item number 4, minutes. This is for the minutes for August 16th, 2024. Because we do not have a quorum today, we will not proceed with item number 4 and taking a vote. We will then move item number 4 to next month's agenda. We'll move on then to item number 5, which is introduction and a meet and greet with new DACAG members. I believe we now have, appointed, or the governor has appointed a tribal representative, but I believe they are not joining us today. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. So given that they're not here today, we will hold off on introductions and hopefully they'll be able to join us next month. We'll move on now to item number 6, which is Energy Commission presentation on building energy performance strategy report development. I welcome Gabriel Taylor to present. Welcome, Gabriel.
Good afternoon, all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Welcome.
great. Great to see you all. And thank you again for taking the time to allow me to present. So my name is Gabriel Taylor, and I am a senior engineer here in the existing buildings branch of the existing buildings unit of the efficiency division here at the Energy Commission. I'm also project manager for the development of the Building Energy Performance Strategy Report and recommendations to the legislature. This was required by Senate Bill 48 that was signed in October of 2023. My goal today is to familiarize you with the requirements of this new law and to summarize the Energy Commission's implementation process and schedule, and then to facilitate any further or your further engagement with our team and input into this analysis over the next approximately year to 2 years that we'll be developing it. Next slide. I have 4 parts to my presentation. First, I'll a summary of Senate Bill 48. Then I'll present our proposed project implementation plan, and next I'll review the project schedule. Finally, I'll summarize some of the comments that we've already received to the record thus far from stakeholders. Next slide. So first, a summary of the new law. Next. Senate Bill 48 added a new section to the Public Resources Code. In addition to definitions, it contains 3 major elements. The requirement to prepare a report and recommendations, specify specific areas that must be analyzed as part of the process, and outreach and stakeholder consultation requirements. I'm going to summarize each of these 3 elements. Next. The primary requirement of the new law is for the Energy Commission to prepare a strategy and recommendations for using benchmarking data to track and manage the energy use and emissions of greenhouse gases of covered buildings in order to achieve the state's goals, targets, and standards. The term covered buildings is defined elsewhere in the law, and in essence, it's large buildings over 50,000 square feet. Our working title for this document is the Building Energy Performance Strategy Report. The report must be completed before July 2026 and then submitted to the legislature before August 2026. As many of you are familiar with the process of developing these kind of documents, that means that we need to have the document largely completed well in advance of those dates. So our goal, I'll go over the schedule of our development process and where we can best use input or best effectively collect input later in this presentation. We're also required specifically in the law to provide recommendations for further legislative action to the legislature as part of this strategy. Next. Section C of the law is a list of 8 specific analytic requirements. The strategy and recommendations must avoid increasing utility and rental costs, with specific requirements to protect renters during building renovations and from post-renovation rental increases. It must analyze feasibility and cost effectiveness of building upgrades available to achieve the energy and emissions reductions identified. It must include both technology and timing flexibility for building owners to achieve compliance. It must include recommendations to encourage equitable access to jobs and other economic opportunities that may result from recommended building upgrades. It must prioritize reductions in fuel-related greenhouse gas emissions. Must prioritize building efficiency and decarbonization measures that will benefit tenants, specifically including energy costs and indoor environmental hazards. Must consider a process for building owners to propose an alternative compliance plan. And finally, it must consider authorizing local jurisdictions to implement their own programs. Next. Section D of the law requires the CEC to engage with a diverse array of stakeholders with a strong emphasis on addressing equity concerns from the level of individual renters up through regional economic impacts. The law also specifically requires consultation with California Air Resources Board, California Public Utilities Commission, and Housing and Community Development. Next. Next, the steps we plan to take to implement these requirements. So first, I'd like to take a moment to introduce our project team. Alicia Yaffe holds a master's in conflict analysis and resolution from the Carter School for Peace and Conflict Studies. at George Mason University. She also has a bachelor's in chemical engineering from Penn State. Mohammed Ahmed holds a bachelor's in mechanical engineering from the University of Maryland. Mai Cheng holds a degree in environmental policy and analysis and planning from UC Davis with a focus in energy and transportation policy. Devla Singh is the program manager of the existing buildings branch, which includes this project. She formerly served at the CPUC at the California Public Utilities Commission for 13 years, working on energy policy and regulatory issues. Blake Dressel holds a master's in civil and environmental engineering from Stanford University. Owen Howlett holds a master's in engineering from Cambridge University and a master's in building science from University College London, and has been in building policy and research for over 25 years. Brent Kelsey is the supervisor of the Building Performance and Metrics Unit, which includes the California Building Energy Benchmarking Program. And finally, I'm the senior engineer for the existing buildings branch and the project manager for the proceeding. Next. So our implementation plan began early last year with initial research and outreach, and also staffing up. We issued a request for input and information earlier this year, and then we collected that information in June. We'll continue with further technical workshops and focused issue meetings later this year. Once we build a public record, our staff will prepare a draft document for public review. Following input and comments on that draft document, we'll prepare a final document for submission to the legislature. Next. We're well aware that with the involvement of such a diverse range of stakeholders, our collaboration efforts will need to be flexible and adapt to the needs of each group. In addition to formal workshop events such as this, in addition to formal workshops and presentations such as this one, we'll plan to seek engagement through smaller meetings, listening sessions, and facilitated collaboration. We're eager to hear recommendations on how best to improve our outreach and engagement, and we're in the process right now of preparing an outreach and engagement plan, and we're working with a number of parties on improving that plan, and then we're going to likely document that in our draft report. Next. The best way for members of the larger community to engage with this process is through these resources. Our website will include links to all major documents, the docket, public workshops, and subscription list, and all the other relevant information. The RFI is still available on our website, and we'd welcome responses to it if anyone is so inclined. So it has a deadline on it of early June, but a lot of the questions on there, most of the questions on there are still quite relevant. So if you'd like to submit a response to the RFI, please feel free to do so. To submit public comments on the proceeding, please visit our e-comment page. To receive all public meeting notices and copies of all documents submitted to the docket, please subscribe to the Building Performance Standards topic under CEC's efficiency subscription category. And finally, if you have any process questions for our team, please feel free to email us at the bps@energy.ca.gov. Next. So a quick summary of the project schedule. Next. So we began staffing and research in November, shortly after SB 48 became law. In June, we received comments in response to our published request for input and information. We'll schedule a series of technical workshops and focused outreach over the coming few months. Our staff will begin to develop the document early next year. That'll be our initial draft document. We'll follow the draft document publication with additional round of outreach, discussions, and public comment. And based on public input about the draft, we'll develop a final document beginning in late 2025. To meet that schedule, we hope to have our draft document out around mid next year, around the summertime next year. And then, of course, the final document's required to be submitted to the legislature by August 2026. Next. So thanks to those who submitted comments already on the record. We've already received at least one comment from a member of the DACAG, and we're looking forward to further interaction, further comments from the members and from the constituent communities. As I said, we're working on our outreach and engagement plan right now, and we plan to reach out to many of the communities that are identified in the law and communities that we identified that are have less resources to engage with this sort of a process, but are identified as being communities that will be significantly impacted, such as renters in multifamily or representatives of renters in multifamily buildings. Next, please. Thus far, 14 organizations have submitted comments to the docket containing almost 250 individual comments. Each of those comments are available for public review, but our staff has reviewed them all and has developed some initial observations and summarized them. I'll summarize them very, very briefly here. We're going to go into much more detail in the future, of course, and we're eager to engage in detailed conversations and consultations with anyone interested in any of these particular topic areas. Next. So first, any building performance metric selected must support both carbon and energy burden reductions. We need to consider the time-varying value and carbon content of energy and account for load flexibility. Some commenters suggested multiple metrics may be necessary to accomplish these goals. And as anybody who's familiar with building performance standards, how they've been implemented in other jurisdictions, that is a little bit unusual. Most building performance standards use a monthly or an annualized average of emissions of carbon or of energy consumption. So this is a bit of a cutting edge kind of thought, and it's something that we're discussing with national labs and a number of other stakeholders. Next. Protecting the interests of building tenants, both residential and commercial, is highlighted in the new law and was emphasized by multiple stakeholders in their comments. There are a host of potential unintended consequences that clearly must be avoided. Building performance policies should reduce energy burden by ensuring that building owners appropriately maintain and improve buildings. Ensuring an equitable distribution of those benefits between the building owners and tenants must be a priority. Next. Any opportunity to reduce the compliance burden on building owners will both improve compliance rates and reduce the costs to comply. Energy Star Portfolio Manager is already required under the state's benchmarking program, but commenters expressed both support and concern for ESPM. We're already in consultations with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Energy Star team, looking at the capabilities of Energy Star Portfolio Manager and the potential to update ESPM to accommodate California's needs for marginal energy value, marginal carbon content. California's advanced metering infrastructure already makes building energy data available for many buildings that are considered covered buildings. And there may be an opportunity to streamline that data collection. Improving data management will be especially important if we explore a metric that accounts for the time-varying value of energy. Next. Economic activity generated by improved building operations and maintenance, including new quality jobs, high-road jobs, could benefit the communities within which buildings are located. Building performance maintenance and improvements will have significant costs, and those costs will need to be compared to the benefits. The non-energy benefits of improved building performance should be considered. Next. Current building efficiency programs rely on generating value by providing incentives to improve buildings beyond what is otherwise required. Some commenters, notably the investor and utilities, recommend designing a performance strategy that integrates with existing energy efficiency programs to ensure building owners have continued access to available incentives. Incidentally, this is consistent with implementation of building performance strategies in many other jurisdictions. BPS is generally considered a stick. It's a requirement to achieve certain levels of energy efficiency, and that naturally needs to be paired with a carrot, needs to be paired with incentives and tax incentives and other support for building owners to upgrade their buildings. Next. The connections between the existing building energy code and the strategy for ongoing building performance developed here are clearly important. Oversight of the design and construction of buildings is covered by the building code, the Title 24, Part 6 Energy Code, and the rest of the building code. The strategy we developed here will be designed to accept the baton from the building code and then regulate the ongoing operations and improvement of buildings after they go into service. So the building code handles the design, the conception and design and construction of a building. Once that building goes into service, the building performance requirements would take over and regulate the operations and maintenance of that building and upgrades to that building until it's throughout its useful life. All the comments that have been submitted thus far will help guide our research and outreach and engagement over the next few months. And we are very much our staff is very much looking forward to starting our writing in early next year. So the next few months is really a critical time in this development process. Now is when we're gathering a lot of the ideas, having consultations with the stakeholders and trying to really make sure we involve everybody in the process who ought to be involved in the process. Once we start drafting the report early next year, we'll continue to engage with stakeholders and pull in additional input. And then, of course, once we publish the draft document, we will have another opportunity to engage with stakeholders and consider updates or edits to the draft proposal. Next. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to hear from our staff on this issue. I think this is an incredibly exciting opportunity for California to lead on building performance policy. California is probably one of the largest jurisdictions that is taking action on building performance. California signed on to the National Building Performance Standards Coalition in 2022, and we are receiving a lot of support from the U.S. Department of Energy, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the national labs. We're a member of a number of cohorts of interstate and intergovernmental working groups that are collaborating to try to develop the best possible policy here. And a lot of those jurisdictions are looking to California to see what we do to help guide what they will do. So thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you, Gabriel, for that presentation. Really appreciate y'all coming to us early on and getting this information out here. But before we jump into DACAG discussion, I want to first turn it over to Zara to see if there's any public comment on this item.
Thank you, Roman. Yeah, the DACAG now welcomes public comments on this item. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those on WebEx, please use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those of you joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and then press *6 to unmute. For anyone in the room, please raise your hand. All commenters should spell your name and give your affiliation for the record, and then share your comment. Seeing no comments in the room, we'll check online. Seeing nothing, back to you.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, again, thank you, Gabriel, for that presentation. Just an initial thought and a question before I open it up for others here. But yeah, it seems like y'all are definitely trying to get ahead of the work here, and by being able to secure some like initial feedback. I'm just curious, like based on that feedback, right, that you all have received, as you're developing your outreach plan, like how are you all planning on connecting the two, right? Like, is your outreach plan, yes, going to be around like who to engage, when to engage, and all of that, but is then the feedback that you all have already received going to be integrated into the type of engagement you all end up doing? So that's one question. And then the other, wanted to see if you could maybe high level share with us some of the initial thinking y'all are going through in your thought process for the development of the outreach plan. You know, it's a big state, so a lot of items that were covered that need to be part of this, plus the feedback that y'all have received. So curious if there's anything you could share there.
Sure. The outreach plan is still very draft, but we're following a lot of the research that's been done by other. There's been a lot of research in this area, and so we're trying to build on that research and really surface that. Our primary tool that we're proposing, and this is not final yet, but we're kind of moving through this, we're trying to filter stakeholders based on the level of impact this proceeding will have on them. So some stakeholders will have a much more significant impact. For example, renters and tenants in a multifamily building that could be impacted by building performance standard will have a fairly significant impact from these policies. So we're rating them very high impact. And then other stakeholders, perhaps the manufacturers of equipment that would be interested, that could be installed in these buildings. Well, their economic impact, they may sell some equipment. The overall impact of these policies on their overall well-being is going to be much more modest than on some other parties. So kind of ranking them there. And then the other area that we're looking to rank, the other dimension rather, that we're looking to measure is on the amount of resources that a stakeholder has. A stakeholder such as an investor-owned utility has fairly significant resources to engage with our process. In contrast, a CBO that maybe is focused on a number of other things and has more modest resources will need much more direct engagement from our staff and much more support so that they can have their voice heard. So we're trying to balance those two dimensions. Beyond that, we're not prepared to go in. I'm not prepared today to go into detail on this because we still are in review internally, but we have looked at resources such as the measure of community engagement. We're meeting with a number of community-based organizations. The Institute for Market Technology secured a grant from the U.S. Department of Energy, and so we have support from them to engage. They're actually paying a stipend to a number of CBOs to engage with us and to comment on our engagement plan, in addition to participating in the project. So we're hopeful to have some refinement to our plan. We of course have our Public Advisor's Office here at the Energy Commission who's supporting our work as well. So the engagement plan, we hope to be part of our document when we issue our draft document, and we'll share that as well. Regarding the input and how that works, so we welcome input to the docket, and that forms a part of the public record to include as reference for our analysis. So we will seek to engage with any stakeholders that have time to engage, to submit written comments to our docket. But we're also looking to find representatives who can bring forward the perspectives, such as many of the members of the DACAG, who can bring forward the perspective of stakeholders that don't have time to submit formal written comments to the docket. So that's efforts such as this. I'm hoping that this forms a start to those conversations so that we can follow up. We can manage the amount of time expectations, but get your voice into the record and heard. These recommendations it's an exciting opportunity to provide direct recommendations to the legislature. We're hoping that a robust, equitable community engagement and outreach plan can be part of those recommendations.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. It's great to hear that there's going to be some resources to help support community-based organizations participate in this process. One thing I want to elevate, and I think we've shared this in the past, right? I mean, I think resourcing community groups is important to make sure that we're able to support their capacity as these requests come to them to engage. Trying to figure out how early on that can be provided so that they can build the capacity. Some of this is extremely technical, so we're not just building the capacity to participate, but then to fully engage, right, is something that we want to also elevate as you all continue this conversation or developing this plan, I'm sorry. But then also really thinking about like how you all are meeting these community groups where they're at, right, and making sure that it isn't just like, oh, you're showing up to their meetings, showing up to their spaces in the times that work for them, and being really intentional about that. One thing I've seen recently, and I'm not saying this is something y'all are doing, but I've seen agencies develop these community forums, right, where they're inviting community groups to come on a particular time in the evening to hear a presentation and then share feedback. And I think that's a good start. But how are we flipping that, right? We know sometimes that doesn't work. How, again, are we really leveraging what they're already doing to help then share this information? And if y'all are, kind of prioritizing whose feedback you want to receive, being able to identify who those groups are, being able to show up, being able to be there in person. I mean, I think what Commissioner Hawk shared earlier around doing these tours, right, and hearing from communities directly, how does staff then also replicate that, right? And with some time frame, be able to do that in person, get that feedback incorporated, and then be clear about how that feedback is going to be used, right? Is this more of an informational and receiving feedback? Is it where in the spectrum, right, of engagement does their feedback fall, so that it's clear that, you know, it might help really shape, or it's really more of just really informing them. So wanting to also make sure that as this continues, that is part of the thought process there. So yeah, I'll open it up to others. If you have comments or questions, you could either come off mute or raise your hand so I can see who wants to comment. Elena, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I had a question about the emissions that I might have missed because I was trying to take notes, which maybe I didn't have to do. Anyway, I was wondering whether or not you're looking at marginal emissions of criteria pollutants and other health damaging air pollutants, or just carbon. And part of the reason I wanted to highlight that is that I think we're going to see an increasing division, or we risk that, as we start to say, burn hydrogen in power plants and other things that are going to be producing criteria pollutants, but potentially have much lower greenhouse gas emissions associated with them.
Yeah, the building performance standards are a pathway to get to existing state goals.
Yeah.
So as far as what targets we're aiming for, those are what are existing on the books. Building performance standards could be used to achieve, or will be used to achieve new state goals. So as the state goals change, we'll adjust the standards to meet those goals. So specifically regarding criteria pollutants, we have existing there are existing criteria pollutant requirements. So these are absolutely intended to consider existing requirements for criteria pollutants. Some of the most significant pollutants that the building performance standards can affect, if you look at what it means to affect building decarbonization, building sustainability, the primary things that you can think of there are carbon, indoor air quality impacts, so particulates and sulfur dioxides in indoor space, and the criteria pollutants from the energy generation system would be kind of separate from the buildings, but any criteria pollutants emitted by the buildings themselves, so combustible fuels in the buildings, that certainly would be something that we would consider.
Okay, awesome. I think that would be really interesting to look at, would be the marginal criteria pollutant emissions as well. And I think that'd be valuable. Thanks.
Absolutely, I agree. Thank you.
Brian, go ahead.
Sure thing. Thank you. Well, thanks so much, Gabe, for giving that presentation. We're making a ton of progress on decarbonizing new buildings. We actually, in the last business meeting, just pushed over to the Building Standards Commission the latest update to our building energy efficiency standards, which really strongly encourage new construction to be all electric, which, in addition to reducing the overall GHG footprint of households, by getting combustion, by encouraging combustion out of buildings, really should improve indoor air quality. Existing buildings, of course, are much more difficult, and also in that latest update, we did create a pathway for governments to adopt requirements locally to require heat pumps when ACs are changed out. And there's a bunch of other tools in the toolkit, but this policy, building performance standards, really is a very important tool, which is a bit more of the stick. We're implementing lots of carrots as well. We are establishing a direct install program using state monies that the legislature appropriated to us, which we're calling the Equitable Building Decarbonization Program, and a suite of federal related programs under the Inflation Reduction Act, namely HOMES and HERA. So we're really hoping to have sort of a comprehensive targeted suite of incentives to help people, make these upgrades. But then also to be able to track, which we have, we're already ahead of the game, having a statewide building energy benchmarking program, and to really kind of have potentially some meaningful policies that really kind of can force upgrades if needed. But obviously this has to happen, within the context where we are absolutely, maintaining tenant protections and being very cognizant of the overall housing situation in California, which is, affordability is difficult. So just really look forward to this process to develop this report that Gabe is leading on, which will then head to the legislature and really will be. I mean, a lot of eyes are on California in terms of how and if we end up developing a statewide BPS, and so this is really going to be a crucial component of getting there.
Right. Thanks for that, Brian. Anyone else? All right. Well, seeing no other hands or anyone else coming off a mute. Thanks again, Gabe, for that presentation. I think this is something of interest for us. So I think as this proceeds and you all are in the deeper in the development process of both the plan, and then as the report also moves into draft or ready for presentation to the legislature, something that we would love to have you back and share what those findings, recommendations are to be able to continue to engage on the issue. So thank you.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
All right. With that, we'll close item number 6, move on to item number 7, PUC and CEC federal funding presentations. I now welcome CEC staff and PUC staff to present on this item.
Sorry, Roman, this is Mona from CEC. About that.
I see the chat. Okay.
Yes, Commissioner Monahan's joined us. She had some technical issues, and I know she wanted to say hi, so thank you.
Yes, apologies for that. Just saw the chat message here. Commissioner Monahan, welcome. We see you speaking, but we can't hear you.
Sorry, we don't hear you now.
Yeah, not yet.
I'll try one more time. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Surely
speak up a little bit though.
Not over.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry. I've actually been trying to get on for an hour. Okay.
Oh.
So really nice to see you guys. Sorry for being late, and sorry also to miss the building presentation and conversation, but glad to be here now. And I won't be able to stay for the whole meeting. I really wanted to stay actually for the CEC related meetings and for the discussion that you're having about equity principles. But so I'm going to stay as long as I can, but just happy to be here after all these, especially after all these technical difficulties. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Commissioner. Really appreciate you joining us and staying on. We'll move forward and hopefully you'll be able to catch the other discussions. So with that, then let's move on to item number 7 and invite CPUC and CEC staff to present on the item.
Great. Hopefully you all can see and hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, thank you to everyone in the DACAG committee for the opportunity to present today. My name is Jean Marie Sanborn. I'm our federal coordinator here at the CEC. I started here back in January. today, my goal is to give you a broad overview of the federal funding work that the CEC has been doing and give you some status updates on our work. And because the CEC is working on so many different federal funding programs, I'm happy to facilitate further engagement on any specific programs that I might mention today. Next slide. So the state of California has a variety of options for drawing down federal climate funds, in particular two recently passed laws, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the IIJA, and the Inflation Reduction Act, or the IRA. And so back in November of 2021, Congress passed the IIJA, which had a number of funding opportunities, including $75 billion for clean energy and power, and then another $7.5 billion in funding for EV infrastructure. And then later in August of 2022, President Biden signed the IRA into law, and that had $369 billion related to energy and climate change. And so just looking at these two laws, there's dozens of different funding opportunities available, and they each have specific eligible entities and proposal requirements. Next slide. So as I alluded to before, these programs all have different eligibility requirements, and sometimes the state is not the right applicant to pursue these opportunities. So I wanted to share first how much climate funding the entire state is getting, which so far looks to be about $21.32 billion from these two laws. And that's just climate funding. So that's very exciting news. And when the state is not eligible or able to apply for a particular funding opportunity, we try to support California applicants in other ways, sharing information with networks, writing support letters, or encouraging eligible entities to apply. Among the broad range of federal funding opportunities that exist, there's sort of two categories. There's formula funds where the funding has already been allocated by Congress, for example, for specific states. But we still have to demonstrate that we meet all the requirements and that we want the funding. And then more complex competitive opportunities where we submit a formal application. And so on the next slide, I'm going to go a little bit more into how this federal funding process works. So next slide. So I told you that there's about $21 billion in climate funding coming to California. The CEC itself is bringing just under $2 billion in federal funding to the state. And this is a really exciting time for us. We have many teams across the CEC, across various divisions, working on our federal funding applications and then actually implementing these programs. Applying for these programs is a somewhat lengthy process, so I thought I'd walk through what that process looks like. So first these authorizing laws were passed back in 2021 and 2022, and then the relevant federal agencies had to look at the law and interpret it to design and release the applications for these programs. And then applicants such as the CEC prepared and submitted applications. Then there's, for each of these opportunities, the federal agency reviews and selects applicants. And then after that, after there's some sort of notice of award, there's actually a quite lengthy negotiation phase with the federal government for a lot of these awards, where the final scope of work is negotiated before agreements are finalized and funds can actually flow to the recipients. And then finally, after all this is done, we can now move on to implementation. So next slide. Perfect. So I wanted to, oh, sorry, previous slide. I had two slides for animation purposes. I wanted to share where we are in terms of this process for the CEC. So I'm really excited to say that we have 4 federally funded programs that are already being implemented. We have about 6 that are currently in various stages of negotiation with federal agencies. And then we have about 5 applications that federal agencies have are currently reviewing. These numbers are approximate because there are some programs where we've applied in multiple rounds or we're applying in multiple phases for these funds. But just to give you a high level sense of where we are in terms of this federal funding process. But we're very excited about these federal funding opportunities. And today I wanted to highlight just a few of them. So I'm first going to talk about 3 programs that are already in implementation, and then 3 formula programs that are related and are in various phases. And then finally, recent news about 3 competitive opportunities that we're very excited about. So we can go on to the next slide. So first, I wanted to talk about a few programs that the CEC is already implementing. I have links to all of these programs where you can find more information about the public processes involved and just more details about these programs themselves. But I just thought I'd mention a few here. So the first is the Community Energy Reliability and Resilience Investment Program, which we call the CERI program, where we're receiving $170 million from this formula program from the DOE. And the goal of this program is to fund projects in California that are going to be increasing community energy resilience and reliability, helping advance our state energy and climate goals, improving energy justice and equity, and also creating good paying jobs. The second opportunity is our National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. So the CEC, along with Caltrans, and is receiving $383 million from the Department of Transportation for this formula opportunity. And you may recall from a DACAG meeting earlier this year when the program leads presented on their deployment plan for this program. And then finally, another program that we're currently implementing is the DOE's Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program. We're deploying that through our Local Government Building Decarbonization Challenge program. And the goal is to help states, local governments, and tribes implement strategies to reduce energy use, reduce fossil fuel emissions, and to improve energy efficiency. So next slide. And so next, I wanted to talk about 3 of our formula programs that are in various stages, but I think may be interest to this group. Brian already alluded to a couple of these in his comment earlier. So the Inflation Reduction Act created 3 programs to help pay for clean energy retrofits in homes across the US. We have the Home Efficiency Rebates Program, which we call the HOMES program. The goal of which is to improve energy efficiency of an entire home. We have the Home Electrification and Appliance Rebates Program, which we call the HERA program. And the goal of that is for electric equipment and appliance rebates for low to moderate income Californians. And then finally, we have the Training for Residential Energy Contractors program, or the California TREC program. And that program is going to fund training and education for residential energy contractors and support HOMES, HERA, and as well as our Equitable Building Decarbonization direct install programs. And so I have links in here to our updated webpage on these 3 programs. It has a lot of information about how the public can engage on these programs, and just as well as a lot of other useful information. And then there's also a frequently asked questions page, which is also incredibly useful, I think. So next slide. So I wanted to just give you a little bit of an update about where we are on these 3 programs. We submitted our application for the HERA program back in January of 2024, and California was actually one of the first 4 states to submit our application for this program. We also submitted our application for the TREC program in January and are still waiting DOE approval. And then we submitted our HOMES application back in August of 2024, so just about a month ago. We're expecting first to launch the first phase of our HERA program in fall of 2024, to launch our second phase in 2025 and 2026, and then to launch our HOMES programs in 2025 and 2026, and then our TREC program we're hoping to launch in 2025. Next slide. And then finally, in terms of programs to make sure that you all are aware of, I wanted to highlight 3 opportunities that we've been awarded earlier in 2024. These are all competitive opportunities that we're really excited about. So the first is the Grid Resilience and Innovation Partnership Program. The CEC, the CPUC, and a variety of partners are going to be receiving $600 million for large-scale transmission capacity. improvements and improvements to the interconnection process. The goal of that is to help increase and accelerate equitable access to renewable energy across California. Secondly, we have our Solar for All program, which is $249 million over 5 years. It's part of the broader greenhouse gas reduction fund suite of programs, and that's a partnership with the CPUC and others. And then finally, we have the goal of that is to create or expand existing low-income solar programs. And then finally, we have the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Grant Program. The CEC, Caltrans, as well as the states of Oregon and Washington just won $102 million from the U.S. Department of Transportation for charging stations and hydrogen fueling stations for zero-emission trucks along Interstate 5 and other key freight corridors. So next slide. And another item I just wanted to highlight about all of these programs is that all of the CEC federally funded programs are subject to Justice 40 requirements. And so as a reminder, the federal government has made it a goal that 40% of the overall benefits of certain federal climate, clean energy, affordable and sustainable housing, and other investments flow to disadvantaged communities that are marginalized by underinvestment and overburdened by pollution. And then I have one more slide. And then I wanted to round out this by sharing other state resources for tracking federal funding. The CEC is not by any means the only entity applying for federal funding. So GoBiz has a really great webpage with resources for available federal funding opportunities, including tracking opportunities that come to California. And there you can find a link to various trackers. And then build.ca.gov maps select infrastructure projects in California. These are not all federally funded projects, but it's a nice website that highlights some of the work that's going on in California. And so next slide. So I want to thank you all again for the opportunity to present here today. The CEC is really excited about this really unprecedented federal funding opportunities. And so this time I really welcome any questions or comments or feedback anyone here has.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. We'll just hold off on questions and comments for now. We'll proceed to the CPUC part, then public comment, and then we'll come back to comment. But thank you for that presentation.
Hello, I'm Adam Banaszak. I'm from the Climate and Equity Initiatives team in Energy Division, and I'm going to present on federal funding opportunities specifically for the investor-owned IOUs and from the CPUC perspective. So next slide. Yep. And I have one quick recap because CEC already did such a great job on some of the opportunities available to California, and then I'll quickly transition over to the specifics for IOUs and what the Commission expects, how the CPUC is tracking utility applications, awards, the approval process they'll follow if they need any match spending, and then sort of a laundry list, quick breeze through, snowplow of federal awards to investor utilities so far. So next slide. I know there's a bunch of members missing, so if there's one thing that you want to say, hey, what was this presentation about, or that you remember in 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, some of these grants go out for another 2 years of still availability. It's that IOU projects funded in whole or part by federal grants are going to face the same level of scrutiny at the CPUC as any other project submitted before the Commission. So there's no magic that follows this federal money. If you have support or if you have concerns about these projects, treat them like any other project that would be before the Commission. So remember that and you'll be set. Next slide. Yep, so this is my quick recap of opportunities because we already have had such a great overview from CEC. Of the 3 big acts, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or AKA the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the Creating Helpful Incentives to Produce Semiconductors and Science Act, the CHIPS Act. A lot of the IOU availability, a lot of the big grants are in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, so I'll be focusing on that a lot. though there are some opportunities that we'll touch on in the Inflation Reduction Act, and there's nothing that we currently have or know about in the CHIPS and Science Act. So the Inflation Reduction Act has more tax incentives and more consumer-focused things, as CEC has mentioned, but there is solar for all in there and some other opportunities. So next slide. Okay, so CPUC expectations for federal funds have always been from the beginning that the IRUs should and will go after trying to secure as much federal funding as possible from these acts, that a lot of the opportunities align very well with state climate goals and state affordability goals, and that any money that the state got from outside sources from the feds could potentially help displace ratepayer money and thus help affordability metrics for the state's ratepayers. To that end, President Reynolds sent 3 letters to all of the state's electric and gas IOUs in January 2022, November 2022, and then earlier this year. All those letters and their responses are available. There's a link there to the CPUC federal funding website. That website is undergoing a pretty big overhaul. The updates aren't live today, but they should be within the next 2 weeks. So if you click on it today, it'll hopefully look different and much more useful in a couple weeks. And essentially that January letter said, hey, we just had this big act passed last fall. How are you planning to access this funding? What are you going to do? Let us know. Over the course of the spring and summer, some opportunities became available, including some requests for proposals and applications. So in November 2022, another letter is issued saying, hello, IOUs, what are your stumbling blocks? What are the roadblocks? How can we alleviate them to make sure as much of this money as possible comes to CPUC and the benefits flow to IOU ratepayers? Those comments resulted in a resolution that I'll talk about, 5254. And then there was a letter issued earlier this year basically saying, hey, it's been 2 years, but the CPUC is still supportive of these. We expect you to go out and secure this money and essentially use this letter as a letter of support in your applications if you need. So next slide. As I mentioned, most of the big opportunities are in the IIJA, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and specifically for IRUs in this GRIP program, which is the Grid Resilience and Innovation Partnerships Program. So you'll see later on that a lot of the applications that have been awarded so far are in one of these 3 sections under GRIP. It's a total of almost $11 billion over the life of the program. And they fall in 3 sections, the first of which is making the grid more resilient for both wildfire and climate extremes. The second group is making the grid smarter to create a 21st century grid, essentially making sure we can remotely control the grid, that we have live time information about what's going on the grid, and things that will help sectionalize the grid. And then third, this is the Grid Innovation Program for basically big transformational efforts, creating new ways to run the grid, creating really big groups or big investments that will result in transformational opportunities. So next slide. And one of the big issues of concern here for the CPUC is that none of this is really free money. It's all requires under the GRIP some sort of match, often 1-to-1 or perhaps even more match. So that means that, you know, even though billions or hundreds of millions of dollars may be available for specific projects, that a match component needs to come from somewhere, and that match might come from ratepayer funding. So though ratepayers may be getting a discount for some of these projects, CPUC still has a vested interest in making sure that the projects are reasonable, prudent, and that they're in the best interests of ratepayers. So next slide. Yep, on that, I mentioned that after one of the president's letters asked for input on what the potential stumbling blocks or roadblocks were, the CPUC adopted Resolution E5254 on April 6, 2023, that first of all continues support for going after these federal projects as a way to advance state climate goals and help affordability goals. It applies to all electric and gas IRUs in the state, large and small, and it essentially has 3 components to help support going after these grants. The first of which is it describes the process by which IRUs should seek and recover costs associated with the matching component, other costs, and approval for projects that are funded. And it establishes that the GRC, so that's the general rate case, or a standalone application is the appropriate process to go through. So both of those are existing, long-standing ways that IRUs come before the commission and apply for funding and approval for projects. The GRC is continuously ongoing every 4 years. For each IOU, a standalone application can come in at any time and can be joint for multiple IOUs. So if you had a project that was, between 2 different IOUs that wanted to integrate some portion, that might be more applicable. Or depending on how the GRC timeline lined up, maybe you need a standalone application. Both of those are, standard CPUC processes that have full public participation, that build a record and result in a commission decision and vote. Second, that resolution established memorandum accounts to track costs, both for costs and for benefits that were coming in. So that way we can make sure that all the costs and benefits are being accounted for and not bleeding into or being approved elsewhere without due process and examination. And third, it established tracking and reporting requirements so that we can see and ensure that the IRUs are continually going after federal funding opportunities and to make publicly available to the degree possible information about what IRUs are seeking. So to that end, next slide, we get quarterly information-only advice letters that, again, that's the CPUC federal funding website that is going to be updated. And that will have a link to all of the different letters that have come in. They come in every quarter, and the IOUs essentially attach a template, which is I think it's 47 or 57 field Excel template on all of the different opportunities that they've applied to or are considering applying to, with lots of different information about application status, description, how much cost, the timeline, if it has standard components like solar panels or EV chargers. So hopefully you can make it sortable and accessible on what's going on. So next slide. And just before I move to a description of specific projects that have been awarded so far, this is from Resolution 5254, which was unanimously voted out by the Commission. Once again, just saying that key point that evaluation of the ratepayer match costs for all of these acts that are coming from, all these projects that are coming from these various federal acts and grants will be consistent with existing Commission practice and procedure through either the GRC or a standalone application. So again, they get treated the same way that other projects get treated. So next slide. And now a very quick tour, I'm sorry if I run through it, of all of the federal awards that have been, that we know of that have been awarded to date to the IOUs. Again, if you look through the latest quarterly advice letters, these are included there. There's a lag in reporting, so some of these have been a little updates on, but they're all in there. So next slide. Great, and a couple notes before I start. As CEC pointed out, it's a very long process to get these awards. So even though things have been awarded, the DOE is often still in negotiation with either a state agency or with the IOU on specifically how much money or terms or the timeline or various other specifics. So essentially everything is still in negotiation, and as a result, we have no cost recovery applications have been received by the Commission for NRLE funded projects as of to date, essentially. So we haven't seen any specifics on what types of ratepayer asks are going to be asked for or the timeline. We do have one exception I'll cover really quickly, which is actually a tax credit from SDG&E. That's not for new infrastructure and it has no match. But as the only thing I've seen so far, I thought it was useful to put in. And I'll organize the rest of the wins into IOU specific and led, where, as CEC mentioned, there's lots of different ways and lots of different potential applicants. These are ones where an IOU specifically has applied and been awarded, so we know that that money will go to the IOU and that the IOU will have to come before the Commission for approval and potentially a match component. And the second are sort of consortia or statewide, where either a state agency or an ad hoc group has won money for the state of California, and it's unclear if any of that money will eventually make its way into IOU hands. So next slide. I'll just cover this one thing that we do actually have so far, the one benefit, which is a IRA production tax credit. So this is if you follow Commission proceedings at all for fun or you're interested. This is the SDG&E 2025 Forecast Energy Resource Recovery Account application, 24510 if you want to look it up. And that's where the IRU comes in and forecasts all of their energy costs for the next year. And SDG&E actually had 8 storage and microgrid projects that had already been approved and were in planning stages that were brought online and built in time on the correct timeline to get IRA tax production credits. So what SDG&E is saying is we have these 8 projects. We have $94 million and $103 million in benefits that we're going to claim on our 2023 federal tax return, which they will finalize next month. And they're going to reduce basically the energy costs in these 2 various accounts that will be passed on to rates starting in 2025. So that is not an infrastructure project, but that is the one benefit that I've seen so far come through. So next slide. This is probably the list more of what people are expecting. I ranked these from largest dollar amount to smallest dollar amount. CEC touched on this one already. It is called the Charge 2 project from PG&E and SCE in cooperation with CPUC, CEC, CAISO, and UC Berkeley. And it stands for California Harnessing Advanced Reliable Grid Enhancing Technologies for Transmission. There are AI acronym generators. I hope people use them in the future because you can rearrange that to make better things. But essentially, it's reconductoring 100 miles of transmission lines across California to increase their transmission capacity without the need to build new transmission corridors. And that would support renewable integration. And there's also a chunk of money and the application that would go to supporting interconnection reform so that renewable energy can be brought onto that increased transmission capacity sooner. As mentioned by CEC, it's $600 million of federal grant, but it does require $901 million of, I'm saying here, ratepayer share. It could come from anywhere in the state, but I'm assuming ratepayer. We'll see once we actually get an application, which this is actually negotiated. And there's a link if you want more details. And then you can see in the bottom corner that this is one of those big GRIP grants from the IIJA for grid transformation. So next. Okay. We have a smaller grid transformational one way up on the north of the state. This was the Tribal Energy Resilience and Sovereignty Project. So it's joint between PG&E, the CCA, which is Redwood Coast Energy Authority, and the Schatz Energy Research Center at Cal Poly Humboldt. So it's pretty much 1-to-1, $88 million of federal grant and $89 million of state match, again, assuming here ratepayer, but don't know yet. And that's for a series of nested microgrids servicing the Hoopa Valley, Yarra, Karuk, and Blue Lake Rancheria tribal lands. So those are all on the 1101 Hoopa circuit for PG&E that has frequent outages and lots of other issues. So that will help increase, so either decrease the amount of downtime and also reduce the amount of public safety power outages and other issues that that circuit faces. So there's a lot of information available about that. I think that's a Yuba Live news story with a bunch of great quotes in it. Next. Yep, going down the size list, Liberty, which services the Tahoe area, has a smaller project, $13 million from DOE and $13 million likely from ratepayer, but could be from another source, to upgrade their grid to basically bring it into 21st century to make sure it can be monitored and controlled remotely. They're very mountainous territory around Tahoe, and they want to make sure that they know what's going on and that they can limit the need to shut off to the smallest amounts in downtime to the smallest amounts possible, and then turn on, bring on that grid as fast as possible to limit wildfire and other needs for outages. That again is one of the GRIP grants. That's the smart grid one in the middle of the 2-3. Next slide. And Pacificor, back up to the north of the state, has 2 grants that they've won, both from GRIP. Again, the big IIJA pool. We don't know how much of this money is going to come to California because Pacificor is a west-wide utility, and these were just one for Pacificor generally. The application on one of them specifically commits to replacing a flood-prone substation that's in the floodplain that currently services the Yurok tribal community. That's the same tribal community that also was mentioned in the PG&E project. They're served by both. They're split across. So they will hopefully get improvements on their grid reliability from both IRUs, from both sides. So that would be great. And then they also have a large project for wildfire reduction that it's unclear if any or all of that will come to California or how much will interact with their wildfire mitigation plan. Both of those from GRIP. Next slide. And PG&E has won 39 different projects. I lumped them all together here for a total of 34.5 million for hydropower incentives. So unlike the other ones I mentioned so far, you can see these are outside of GRIP. These are just incentives, so there's no ratepayer match here. This is just straight, we'll go up towards reducing ratepayer costs. They under the maintaining and enhancing hydroelectricity incentive payments. So these basically go to older hydroelectric dams for one of three reasons: to help keep them safe, to help increase ecological benefits like fish ladders, or to help them integrate better into a grid that has storage and renewables so they can be ramped up or brought on or otherwise serve in a smart grid better. So if you have specific concerns or specific interests in a specific PG&E dam, the whole list of the ones they won is there. And every project PG&E went up for, they won. So it was up to $5 million per facility and up to 30% of the costs. So there's a very long list you can scroll through if you're interested there. Next slide. And I put this at the end because it's unknown how much will happen, and I'm still not sure if they fulfilled all of it. This is the Civil Nuclear Credit Program. So this is for up to 1.1 billion in payments, again, incentives. There'd be no match that would go towards PG&E for Diablo Canyon for keeping it in service, where otherwise it would have went out of service due to economic reasons and would have led to an increase in air pollution. So this is the award that was tied up in the relicensing of Diablo and a bunch of state bills and things. So I'm not quite sure its status, but it was awarded by DOE earlier in the year. Next slide. And then wrapping up with a bunch of what I call really small research awards. These are things that tend to be shared across a bunch of utilities or a bunch of groups. They tend to be very small and they're focused more on modeling or sort of R&D type things. I would expect these to come in through a GRC. PG&E has 2, SDG&E has 1. PG&E has 1 for essentially LIDAR, like a very highly detailed land model to help with assessing wildfire risks and how wildfire may act across its service territory and across the state. And then PG&E and SDG&E both have awards for essentially the same thing, which is how to model the grid when there's tons of distributed generation and storage on it. So next slide. That wraps up all the IRU specific ones. So these are the consortia or statewide awards that have been awarded so far. So essentially these are awards that may eventually benefit IOUs, but we're not quite sure if any of the money will actually come to it yet. So the top one was mentioned already by CEC. Solar for All, that's 200 million plus to expand low-income solar programs. Again, that's non-match money, it's just a grant. And then there's a link for more info there. I'd expect that at some point there'll be a CPUC proceeding to help integrate that into some of the SOMA and other low-income solar programs, but none of that has been finalized yet. So continue to watch that space. That is from the IRA. That's the essentially big one out of the Inflation Reduction Act that IRUs are expected to benefit from. And then 2 other ones down here, ARCHES, which is for the hydrogen hub. That's 1.2 billion for hydrogen development. That could go to a variety of things from helping hydrogen infrastructure at ports. LAWPD wants to convert their gas plants to hydrogen. Scripps wants a hydrogen-powered maritime research vehicle, or it may go helping build the Angeles pipeline. Nothing's really been announced there, except that the state does have that money available. And the second I'll point out is the National Clean Investment Fund. So that's part of the GGRF, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund at the federal level. iBank worked with the Coalition for Green Capital, which was awarded $5 billion, and California is expected to receive a couple $100 million in improved access to clean capital. So this is essentially a revolving fund, not really grants, but if you have a project where the financing isn't penciling out exactly, because you might need slightly advantaged terms or you have other issues, you'll be able to go to the Coalition for Green Capital, get financing at better terms, and then make your green project pencil out and continue forward. And lastly, I have one last one, California Direct Air Capture and Storage Hubs. So this is a statewide coalition trying to bring carbon capture and storage to the states. There's sort of 2 pilots currently announced underneath it, neither of which are IOU related. $12 million study to try and remove CO2 directly from the air and sequester that underground in Kern County. And then another one that is not on here for in SMUD territory for working with capturing emissions directly from a power plant and sequestering it. Again, nothing for IOUs so far, but may at some point in the future. So that's my very quick run through of what I know about that is coming to IOUs or may come to IOUs that's been awarded to the state so far. You can next slide for questions and next slide for my contact information. Again, I would watch the CPUC federal funds website. That'll be updated shortly with all of the updated tracking. So if you have specific concerns around a project or if you want to see what's coming in from an IOU, you'll be able to look for their advice letters there. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Adam and Jean Marie, for that presentation. Very thorough presentation. A lot. Y'all covered a lot. So I still trying to process everything that was shared. But before we jump to DACAG comment, I'll turn it over to see if there's any public comment on the item first.
Thank you. DACAG now welcomes public comments on this item. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and we'll alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those on WebEx, please use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, press *3 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute. For anyone in the room, please raise your hand. All commenters should spell your name and give your affiliation for the record, and then share your comment. Seeing no public comment in the room, let's check the WebEx. Seeing no raised hands, back to you.
Great, thank you. All right, yeah, DACAG members, please feel free to raise your hand if you have comments. Again, thank you for that very thorough presentation. I think it's a lot of investments, federal investments coming our way. And I have 2 initial questions here, and the first one just regarding kind of the CEC side of investments, right? With PUC, we heard about the need for match funding, not for all, but many of the federal funding programs that federal programs that they're receiving. On the CEC side, are there match funding requirements for you all? And if so, like what funds are you all using for that match funding? And the reason I'm asking is when I look at PUC and the billions of dollars, right, that are coming down potentially, right? All I could think of was the potential billions of dollars that then also need to be captured through ratepayer funds eventually, right? And the impact that that'll have on ratepayers. And just, yeah, like we know we're in a tough economic situation. We know that anything, right now is going to impact people's wallets. So curious of the approach that Energy Commission is taking to when there is a need for match funding, maybe potentially something that could be explored at the PUC. And then for the PUC programs, right, like what's the guesstimate, right? Like is there one around what that potential ratepayer impact will be, right, on these billions of dollars? What are we talking about? Some of these are not online, still going to take time to kind of like bring them on board. So like we're talking multiple years, and then potentially how much, right? Like how much of that calculus has already happened? Yeah, I'll pause there.
I can start first with the CEC question. That's a great question about match funding. So it's different for every program. I will say a lot of our programs that I mentioned today do not require match funding. And that's partly because that's how the programs were designed, but also because the state because of the current budget situation, does not have a lot of excess funds for match. So part of that is just we've been strategic in what we've applied for. So we aren't providing a lot of match for those programs. The one program that I know of on that list that I talked about today, the CERI program, where there is match, we have to pass the match requirement on to our recipients, at least for these first few years. It's a 5-year program, so that may change over time.
And I can answer from your question for the CPUC. One of the big things in that resolution 5254 is making sure that these investments are prudent and that they're not adding on actual extra costs, but they're helping displace costs that would have otherwise been borne completely by ratepayers. So that's part of the goal here. So it's hard to sort of guess how much of these billions that are currently won are on top of what would have had to go through to ratepayers, or what are actually offering a discount to ratepayers at this point, especially because we don't have any applications in front of us about what exactly is being requested or the timeline. But if you read through those letters from the president's office, it's clear over time that affordability becomes more and more of a concern, and making sure that the IOUs know that this money should be used to help advance affordability concerns.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'll definitely look further into those letters, because definitely I think affordability is a key area of interest for us. And I know we definitely we care about these programs and ensuring that we are leveraging federal dollars, given the where we're at with our budget this year and upcoming years. So being able to leverage as much federal funding is important, and obviously continuing to think through ensuring that we're not impacting ratepayers significantly. And I appreciate that. And then years later, right? Like we might see that what was potentially requested doesn't always plan out, right? And then we see those increases because utilities are trying to recover, right? Even though they might have said, we're trying to not add, but only replacing. So just kind of think through how do we get ahead of that, right? And I appreciate the guidance from President Reynolds and the intentionality here, but like just kind of thinking out loud here, right? Of how do we make sure that we are truly avoiding those eventual, cost increases. So anyways, I'll turn it over to Julia.
I have one follow-up too, if I can.
Go for it. Yeah.
The resolution also preserving the GRC and standalone applications and existing processes for cost approval and project approval also helps ensure that there's enough time and comment for discussion for all of those concerns in front of the commission. If you read through comments on the resolution, the IUs had requested that essentially projects face a lower bar or that would be automatically approved if they had received any amount of federal funding. And that was not what was decided on in the resolution. So there's still the full application procedural format to discuss, to investigate, to have hearings, to see if these are really the types of projects that are going to, again, displace needed funding and add to affordability.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And then I'll just one more thing then on this point before I turn it to Julia. But I think what it flags for me as well, right? And I think about not just for PUC, but Energy Commission, Air Resources Board, CalSTA, all these agencies, right, that are receiving funding, federal funding for advancing programs, and especially as we think about the Justice 40 requirements or trying to ensure that we are advancing projects that are or programs that are meeting the needs of low-income, disadvantaged communities, priority populations, whatever terminology the agency use, is like how much of that feedback, right, is actually helping guide what these agencies or utilities eventually end up pursuing, right? Solar for All, sure, I think there's been a lot of engagement on that, and I think there's a high interest in that. But some of these other ones that I feel like could be, but through what process was that decision eventually made, right, to pursue that, right? And then eventually, like, the Justice 40 requirement gets slapped onto it and be like, yeah, look, we're going to invest some of this. But was that really a community identified priority that led to this potential application? And Adam, you might not have this answer, right? And I think this is just more of an ongoing discussion we've been having, not just at the DACAG, but just more broadly around investments that we end up having in disadvantaged communities or priority populations or ESJ communities, that there's this conflict, right, of like who is driving what, right, and on whose behalf. And if we keep talking about wanting to embed equity and ensuring equity is part of it, it's not just the outreach process, right? It's about like the decision-making process. Then how are we seeing that feedback then shape what we end up applying for, right? Or how we end up moving forward on projects, because that gap continues to exist. And I see the list of programs, and I think there's definitely some stuff that will align, but not everything, right? And so like, how do we then continue to shape and reform and adjust, I think, the structures that we've developed for securing or trying to secure these funds, when we know not all of them are going to be really what the community's been asking for, but at the end, the agency might still say that it is, and then add some equity components to it. So anyways, I think something that, I think for me, I definitely want to continue to just kind of explore and see ways that we can continue to just adapt those processes to make sure that what we end up applying for is reflective of what the communities, if you're applying on behalf of ESJ or disadvantaged or priority populations, that it is reflective of what they're asking for. Julia, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just double click everything you just asked about and shared, Roman. My question is just for any funds that have not that are pending or have not yet been allocated, what happens with that funding if there is a change in administration at the federal level?
That was my question.
Is something that I will have to circle back to give you the proper answer on that. It's a very good question, but it's not something I want to ad lib.
Chelsea or Adam, did you have something to share?
Judith can add in.
I think this is an area of high concern and interest, and that's why we're doing whatever we can to facilitate the process so that these grants are further along in the process. So I think to the extent that we're implemented and awarded and the negotiations are completed, then that bodes well for actually implementing these projects. However, I'd also say that many of these projects do reflect broad priorities for increased transmission. The GRIP projects, I would think have broad support, making sure our hydro systems are not, dangerous. Existing hydro, that's broad support, and all over the country. So I think, we're definitely I think everyone is very focused on getting these implemented and as far along as we can.
I would second that as well.
Yeah, and I'm not disputing that it might not be reflective of broad interest, right, in applying and advancing these types of accessing these types of resources. I think that's true. I think as we think about layering Justice 40 on top of it, and then determining, how many of the programs that we're applying for are providing those benefits to Justice 40 communities, ESJ, all of the definitions I've already walked through, how many of those actually, align, right? I think more squarely with the priorities than maybe some of the broader ones around like, grid reliability. I know definitely that's a key concern, right, for everyone as we think about electrification efforts. But some of these other ones that I think we're also attaching a Justice 40, requirement or trying to, attach the Justice 40 requirements to it. So, Chelsea, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for these presentations. For the energy efficiency home rebates programs, are you all, and this is for the CEC, are you ensuring that these programs have tenant protections? And I have a couple questions, and I'm sorry if you answered this one already, but where then are the opportunities to influence what some of these programs look like? Has that been determined already? I mean, I know some of the funding is being funneled into already existing California programs. Is that actually the case for all of the funding you shared about today? And then would also love to know, how much of the funding is going into the Equitable Building Decarb program? Like what percentage of total funds for the home rebates does that represent?
Those are all really great questions. I will have to circle back to the team for the answers to some of those questions. Some of these programs, so the Homes and Hero programs, we're applying to each of those in 2 phases. So we haven't even submitted our phase 2 application for the homes in here, to my knowledge. So there's still a lot of room to determine how to best spend these funds and to have public input. And that was also part of the reason for submitting these applications in phases as well. And they're not just going to pre-existing programs. Part of the funds are going to the Equitable Building Decarb program, but some of these are for new programs. And I'm happy to follow up with like further details. And then I think the final question was about tenant protections. There have been discussions about that, but I would have to follow up onto the team for a more detailed answer for that question. But that's consumer protections more generally have been a topic of discussion surrounding these programs.
Thank you. If I can respond. Thanks, I appreciate that. And the reason I bring up the Equitable Building Decarb program is I feel like that's kind of our best chance at helping decarbonize multifamily properties. Right now, I don't think there's a strong incentive for property owners or landlords specifically to like utilize these programs and decarbonize in the absence of mandates. And tenants kind of miss out on these programs as well, especially if the programs are rebate programs because of high upfront costs. So yeah, we would love, I mean, yeah, I think the EBD program is a good program that a lot of advocates worked hard on to make good.
Yeah, that's really good feedback. And we're really happy that the homes program can be, partly braided into that program.
Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing no hands. Yeah, thanks again, Marie and Adam for the presentations. Yeah, I think it's a future point. Would love to have you all come back, right, and just share updates on where we're at with some of these applications that y'all programs and applications that y'all have shared to see where we're at with implementation, and then I think more specifically thinking about the potential ratepayer impact in the future. I think one thing that I'll just like close this item with is what I've noticed is like both like federal funding processes and even sometimes state funding, just the contracting phase just is so long-winded, right? Like it takes forever to go through contract negotiations and then finally sign it and then get to implementation. And then because that contracting process takes so long, then implementation sometimes is rushed, right? And then it impacts like how good of a potential job you're doing at reaching the intended target audience as part of that, right? So I've been trying to figure out now for some time, like what are ways that we could potentially try to expedite those processes. And some of that is way out of our hands that we can't do anything about. But if there are things that we can start thinking of and doing to kind of help move that along, is something that we need to explore, because then all that does is puts these timelines behind. We run into a scenario here about potential change in administration, and we can't potentially access some of these funds. Implementation might look different. So how do we like potentially like start shifting some of these structures, these processes, these frameworks that have been set up to help get these dollars into the hands quicker than we currently do? So thank you both for the presentation, and look forward to hearing from you all in the future. With that, we will move then to item number 8, which is the DACAG Equity Framework update. First, I just want to thank everyone. I wasn't here last month, so really appreciate Julia and the rest of you all to moving this forward and getting this approved. It was a year plus worth process to get to update it. So really appreciate everyone's patience and support throughout the process, but especially thank you, Julia, for all the work on the framework. With that, we do want to continue the conversation on the framework. And so we'll turn it over to Zara and to Dorothy to provide updates and steps to provide broad awareness of the updated equity framework.
Yeah, I can go ahead and go first. Next slide, please. Great. We want to begin this conversation back at the CPUC's ESJ action plan. We really see this as the vehicle in which to include the DACAG Equity Framework in CPUC's work. So for folks who may not be as familiar, the CPUC's ESJ action plan was first published in February of 2019 and then was updated in April of 2022. It establishes a series of 9 goals related to health and safety, consumer protection, program benefits, and enforcement. And this is across all of the sectors that CPUC regulates. So not just clean energy and pollution reduction programs. And of those 9 goals, there are 96 action items, and one of them, 2.1.3, relates to the work of the DACAG, and it says that Energy Division will continue to support and coordinate with the DACAG to maximize opportunities to provide feedback to CPUC proceedings, programs, and processes. And that guidance provides guidance to staff to, quote, build pathways for DACAG feedback to inform CPUC proceedings and programs. So basically, this is to say that if the ESJ action plan is included within the scope of a proceeding, then the DACAG Equity Framework has a pathway to inform the record of that proceeding. Next slide, please. So whether ESJ issues are considered or not happens on a proceeding by proceeding basis, and the ESJ action plan is scoped into relevant proceedings. And so the opportunities here are either like through parties or through commissioners. So parties can inform the record of issues to be considered through a transparent public process, or the assigned commissioner assigned commissioner issues a determination of the issues, including whether there are ESJ issues to be considered within a proceeding. Next slide, please. And so there is already a very significant alignment between the ESJ action plan, its most recent version, its 2.0 version, and the revised DACAG Equity Framework. So all 9 of the overarching goals of the ESJ action plan align with the DACAG's clean energy mission of the Equity Framework. And of the 26 energy division action items, they align with DACAG's SB 350 clean energy mission. And the Equity Framework can certainly be used to inform CPUC's clean energy and pollution reduction policies and programs. And we really appreciate the details that it adds in calling out specific target communities and considerations when engaging with ESJ communities. And we think it's a really valuable resource that we hope that we're going to continue to circulate. Next slide, please. I wanted to walk through the points of commonality between the ESJ action plan and the equity framework, goal by goal. So the first goal is to integrate equity and access across all CPUC regulatory activities. And the purpose stated in the equity framework is to guide agency staff and commissioners to ensure they embed and center equity within their efforts. Goal 2 concerns investment in clean energy resources, specifically benefiting ESJ communities. And the guiding principles of the equity framework include the increased access to clean energy technologies in ESJ communities. Goal 3 concerns improving access to high quality communications, which we really see as necessary in order to support DACAG's priorities, such as transportation electrification, community engagement, and reliability. Goal 4 speaks to climate resiliency in ESJ communities, which the equity framework notes that like access to benefits of clean energy programs are only realized with resilient communities. Goal 5 speaks to public participation and outreach stakeholder engagement. And the equity framework provides specific tools, such as the spectrum of public participation, in directing agencies to implement strong stakeholder feedback loops. Next slide, please. Turning to the rest of the goals real quickly, goal 6 is about safety and consumer protection. Health and safety benefits are addressed within the equity framework, as well as a new consumer protection section. Goal 7 is about promoting high road career paths and economic opportunities for ESJ communities. And that same high road framework is referenced within the DACAG Equity Framework, prioritizing career pathways, hiring goals, labor standards, as well as priority communities like populations with limited English proficiency and reentry or justice impacted populations. Goal 8 speaks to training and staff development at the CPUC, which like the DACAG doesn't do directly, but through the framework acts as can guide agency staff in determining how they embed in sector equity within their efforts. And finally, the last goal talks about evaluation. And in the new equity framework, there is this new metrics evaluation and accountability section that calls for clear equity requirements, transparent data collection, and implementation. Next slide, please. Efforts that have been taken to broadly promote the latest DACAG framework so far includes sharing the framework with all commissioners' offices, all energy division staff and managers, CPUC's outreach staff, as well as the Environmental and Social Justice Action Plan division liaisons. They received a presentation at their September monthly meeting by yours truly. Next slide, please. As far as staff tracking of the use of the DACAG Equity Framework, staff will track the use of the framework across energy proceedings biannually as part of our ESJ Action Plan implementation tracking efforts. So this is something we already do twice a year. We ask all of our teams at Energy Division that have tasks within the action plan to give us updates on progress that they've made. And so as part of that outreach, in tracking action item 2.1.3, which specifically concerns the DACAG, staff will monitor use of the equity framework specifically in energy-related proceedings and activities. And staff can be available to provide regular updates to the DACAG aligned with this biannual timeframe. Next slide. I'll wrap it up with some next steps. So the DACAG can present the revised equity framework to the CPUC commissioners at an upcoming CPUC voting meeting during its DACAG annual report out, but that would pend a DACAG member vote. Unfortunately, we don't have quorum today, so members cannot take a vote at this meeting, but can have the opportunity to take one at a future meeting. CPUC will prepare a presentation on agency process for a future DACAG meeting, which we will do in coordination with the CEC. And then the next CPUC update on framework use can happen as soon as February 2025. And that's it from me.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Dorothy.
Hello. Good afternoon. My name is Dorothy Moremi with the Office of the Public Advisor, Energy Equity and Tribal Affairs at the California Energy Commission. The California Energy Commission, CEC, is committed to advancing equity in all aspects of its work. Our goal is to embed equity in all the work we do. we're always looking for more resources to support our equity work, one of which has been the DACAG's Equity Framework. Oh, and I hope folks can hear me. Yes? Sorry. Okay, great. All right. As we conveyed last November, while the principles of the framework, the DACAG's Equity Framework, are widely accepted, the California Energy Commission, the CEC, has embedded the DACAG's original equity framework's 5 principles of health and safety, access and education, financial benefits, economic development, and consumer protection into 3 key areas, with the prioritization of underserved communities and removing barriers and benefits to consumers. First is the Justice, Access, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, that's JDI framework. This document inspired and informed by the DACAG's original equity framework, serves as a guide with principles for decision-making in energy equity policies, programs, and processes. It aims to benefit California's Native American tribes and justice communities, with justice communities including disadvantaged communities, DACs for short, low-income communities, underserved communities, and people living with disabilities, or otherwise known as individuals with diverse abilities, as defined by the Americans with Disabilities Act. Second is the implementation in the Gas Research and Development, that's Gas R&D, program for fiscal years 2022 to 2023 and 2023 to 2024. Here, the equity framework matrices for these fiscal years focused on topics such as hydrogen storage, gas pipeline safety and integrity, gas leakage mitigation, building decarbonization, and industrial hydrogen use. These topics were assessed for their impact on health, safety, economic development, financial benefits, and education in disadvantaged communities. And finally, the integration into the Electric Program Investment Charge, in short, EPIC, the EPIC 4 investment plan. Now, a 45-point equity matrix with direct and indirect benefits was developed with guidance from the original DACAG equity framework to ensure that equity was embedded in research, development, and investment efforts. DACAG equity framework was used as a guide, as you can see in these 3 areas. Oh, sorry, I'm moving too fast for myself. There you go. So DACAG asks that we and our partner CPUC provide information on how we will be socializing the revised DACAG equity framework within our agencies. So for us, CEC, we plan to introduce and present the new 2024 DACAG equity framework update across the organization. In the recent CEC business and internal division meetings, we did announce that revisions to the framework were being made and considered by DACAG and open for public comment. We also did announce an internal meeting that the DACAG had adopted the 2024 update of the DACAG equity framework. Now that it's been adopted, we'll provide more detailed presentations in division-wide meetings to ensure all staff are familiar with it. These meetings will involve most technical and policy departments at the CEC. This includes efficiency, transportation, research, reliability, renewable energy and decarbonization, siting, transmission, environmental protection, and energy assessment divisions. So members of the executive office and commissioners who lead those divisions will also be in attendance. Additionally, we'll offer comprehensive support to division DACAG liaisons. These are staff who are supporting their divisions and making sure that we get information to DACAG from those divisions and vice versa. We'll make sure those liaisons and other staff incorporating the equity framework into their work as appropriate. The California Energy Commission referenced the original DACAG equity framework in developing its own, as I mentioned earlier, JDI framework, which is currently under discussion the CEC JDI proceeding. The purpose of the JDI proceeding is to create a JDI action plan, which will provide a strategic approach to integrating justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion across all CEC policies and programs. I'll be docketing the new DACAG Equity Framework into the official record for the JDI proceeding. Additionally, CEC plans to revise its citation of the DACAG Equity Framework in any future updates to the JDI framework. As DACAG is aware, earlier this year, CEC launched an informational proceeding on non-energy benefits and social costs. This was in response to a petition from the Center for Biological Diversity and a coalition of environmental health and justice organizations, which requested the inclusion of non-energy benefits and social costs earlier this year. As a result, CEC initiated an informational proceeding on non-energy impacts, or NEIs, to explore methods for incorporating NEIs and social costs into CEC analyses and programs. I also plan to docket the new DACAG Equity Framework into the NEI proceeding. So we can move on into discussion together with Zara, but these are a few questions that we had. In what other ways should CEC prioritize and incorporate the principles of the DACAG Equity Framework into its projects and programs to ensure meaningful benefits for justice communities? And also, what additional steps should CEC take to engage and collaborate with DACAG for agency use of the new DACAG Equity Framework? Yeah, and I'll hand the mic back to you, Ramon.
Thank you, Dorothy and Zara, for the presentation. Yeah, really thankful for y'all sharing ways that y'all are socializing and envisioning to embed the framework in. Before we jump into DACAG discussion, just quickly open it up to see if there's any public comment on this first before moving into that.
Thanks, Ramon. DACAG now welcomes public comments on this item. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and we'll alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those on WebEx, please use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, please press *3 to raise your hand and then press *6 to unmute. For anyone in the room, please raise your hand. All commenters should spell your name and give your affiliation for the record and then share your comment. Any comments in the room? No? Now going to the WebEx. Seeing no raised hands, I'll pass it back to you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, again, thank you for the presentation and kind of outlining some next steps here for continuing to socialize and really figuring out how we best integrate the framework into PUC and CEC proceedings and dockets. I guess one question I have as we continue to figure this piece out is, many times I think I've heard like, hey, through the proceeding or within the docket, right? Like there's direct guidance to engage the DACAG. And that's many times why we get presentations, we get, folks showing up to these meetings and updating us on that proceeding or that docket. And I'm just curious of like how then the framework could potentially also be referenced there, right? In that process, not just like coming to the DACAG, but then the framework itself. Like, is that something that can be explored? Is it a possibility? Like, is the ESJ, like, do they do something similar with the ESJ or the JDA framework? Or is this something new that we would have to explore to kind of figure out whether it's like both identifying the DACAG as a group to engage, but then also the framework itself?
This is Nona with the Energy Commission. I don't think I'm following you, Roman. Can you like rephrase what the like idea is, so I can answer. Can you hear me?
Y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you a little bit. It faded out.
My headphone. So, can you hear me now? Is that better?
It's very low.
It's very low.
Second.
Okay.
Better now? Seeing some head nodding. I'll find some headphones in a minute to use. My laptop is kind of old, so speakers are not that great. But okay, yeah. Let me reframe it. Right. For proceedings and dockets, generally in some, but not all proceedings, but in certain proceedings and dockets, there's clear directive to engage the DACAG, right? To come before the DACAG and present whatever plan you all are developing, outreach, whatever. There's directive to engage the DACAG. In that vein, is it also possible? What's the process to then not just having language that directs them to come to the DACAG, but to also reference the framework that we've developed? Hopefully, that's a little bit more clear.
Thank you. This is Mona with Energy Commission. I want to look into this. I think, like for the Energy Commission, just speaking for the Energy Commission, when there's a directive to engage with DACAG, I've only seen that in the context of EPIC, where there's a CPUC decision that says that. I'm trying to think of other instances where we've gotten that directive, but in the absence of the directive, we just have it as a regular course of staff bringing items where we want to engage and reach more disadvantaged communities. So they'll proactively ask for items to be presented either at a DACAG meeting or at a subject matter expert meeting. We haven't had as many directives for that kind of engagement. We've relied on staff to initiate that engagement, but I want to look into that. So thank you for that.
And Ramon, it's Cheryl. I can speak a little bit for the PUC. This is one thing in Zara's presentation that noted that that even the ESG action plan is decided or will be decided in any future proceedings in a proceeding by proceeding basis. That's the whole record basis, right, that the commission uses, and provides the opportunity for all parties to weigh in on what should be part of the scope. So this would probably be something similar that you're talking about if you wanted it specifically called out, if that's what you're talking about. Some of the process that, we've noted to you that we want to kind of talk more about within the context of how process works. I think one that will then kind of give bigger context as we're ready to do that. But I think because you've asked more of this scoping question, and sort of the conduit, the DACAG, like not being parties, but wanting to make sure that we create those linkages to get into the record. I think that's what we're talking about more internally. So we're definitely following up on that question. We just need a little bit more time to make sure that when we give you an answer, we're kind of good to go with that.
All right, great. Thank you, Cheryl. I really appreciate that. And Mona as well. Any other comments or questions? Please feel free to raise your hand. Go ahead, Julia.
Yeah, I really appreciate the presentations, Dorothy and Zara. It's really encouraging to see all the ways that you've already presented and shared the framework, and the fact that you're updating citations is really is great to hear on the CEC side. I think let's see, where was my question? My question was around, so it looks like the thing we're kind of holding on to for getting the equity framework into the record is the fact that the DACAG feedback is referenced as one of 96 action items in the CPUC Environmental, Social Justice, and Action Plan. I'm concerned that that's maybe not enough to get, that's a really dense document with a lot of great content, and clearly there's a lot of alignment between the framework and the ESG action plan. But I'm concerned that if it's just one of 96 action plans and it's just a reference of building pathways for feedback, that we're not necessarily going to get what's in the framework incorporated in the way that we would want. And I think what we're particularly concerned about is making sure that the views and perspectives of disadvantaged communities or priority communities are represented in proceedings and are represented in the record when those communities cannot participate. And we know that individuals from these communities and groups from these communities are not parties to proceedings because that process is really, the barriers to participating as a party are extremely high. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is, I'm just curious to know how the ESG action plan, how it came to be that it could be scoped in a proceeding. And if there's a similar pathway for the equity framework to be scoped in a proceeding as its own thing. So two questions there, or just two things to address.
Sorry, I may have missed the first one, but the second one, Julia, is exactly what we described. It's part of this proceeding process. Any proceeding develops a scope first with all parties. And it may be, as Zara noted, it could be suggested through a ruling by a commissioner that's interested in getting that in. It can be recommended by parties, right? It's a kind of a conversational process with parties so that everyone can weigh into the record. But it's not like somebody just said, oh, the ESJ plan will automatically be in all proceedings. It's considered on a case-by-case basis.
Got it. So how does if it has to be through a party or through a commissioner's ruling, how can disadvantaged communities participate in that conversation and get their concerns scoped into the proceeding?
That's, I think, yeah, I see Vanessa coming on to talk about that. But like I said, it is a procedural process. There are ways where there are public comments in the docket and so forth. But Vanessa, do you want to add on to that?
I mean, one of the procedural mechanism in a lot of proceedings are having like public participation events throughout the state, depending on what the topical area is. And so that would kind of be an avenue where, right, the commission is going directly to the communities to seek that feedback. That's one example.
Vanessa, can I just jump in to actually give an actual example, because Zara and I and our lead analyst, Megan Cook, and I think we had reached out to you about our climate adaptation community engagement planning process, just started our workshop series on that yesterday with Commissioner Hauk, who's the lead commissioner at the workshop all day. And that is a proceeding that's about community engagement and equity impacts. And because we understand that not every party may have that equity background, we have actively reached out and built a whole separate list of outreach to get people to participate in that proceeding, where they can add through the workshop their comments that will be on the record, that will inform a staff proposal, and we're going to look for other ways too, to make sure that there are pathways along the way. Well, we're going to talk to you later in staff announcements about what's coming up on this one. As a matter of fact, when Zara presented on questions, she actually used the new equity framework and brought up some things that have been brought up in that and said, hey, the DACAG has mentioned this. What do you think about this? And so, obviously my team is very aware of it in the proceedings that I cover in addition to the DACAG. But it's the kind of thing that, as Zara described, that we're looking to build that kind of awareness through all teams within Energy Division to be able to utilize it in that way. So that's just an example building off of what Vanessa mentioned about how we do like public meetings. But I will say that part of that meeting was about what are the barriers to getting people to participate, right? And we can hold these meetings, but there's also, will we get people to come up and, come out and participate and be able to give comments. And I would say we had great participation yesterday in that regard. But we do know that community groups are spread thin. And so it is one of the things that we're looking at. Sorry,
Yeah,
Vanessa, back to
exactly.
you.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly my question, I think, is like how, I don't think that the equity framework can replace, like direct community participation, but I think our hope was that it could at least fill in some of the gaps. So like, how can we get it to be part of the record? How can we get it to be part of proceedings? How can we get it scoped into these proceedings so that it can supplement those workshops, or it can be fill in the gaps when you can't do those workshops or when you can't get a DACAG SME to get involved?
Well, as I think, we noted that we think it is already part of the process because the ESJ action plan staff is directed to incorporate it.
Well,
and I think, let me just
challenge
finish one thing, Julia, because I just want to remind and especially since, we have a lot of new DACAG members, that when we did present, I guess it was in November, that we noted even without this conversation that in 10 proceedings that staff was already looking to your framework. So there's an awareness, and I do think that thing of educating using it, because staff will want to look, right, who may not be experts in this and will want to look to the framework. Sorry, go ahead.
The same thing as incorporating it into the record? To have staff considering it, is that the same as having it in the record or having it as part of the scoping?
Well, I guess it depends on how you view it. I think you saw our view that we believe that via the ESJ action plan, that it's if the ESJ plan is in the record, that it's something. If you want it called out specifically, I think that has to do with in every proceeding, and this is the part that we're not ready to talk about yet, about how that would happen, right? Unless, into the scope of the proceeding, if you want to get involved in every proceeding, and then I think, that is essentially the way. Each proceeding is developed on its own in terms of its scope. But that said, that's where I want to circle back with you about how we may be able to support that as we, talk more about scope internally, given that, it's the DACAG as an advisory group and how we do that with your other letter process and so forth. It's just that I understand that you would like that certainty now, but I don't, for my team, have that certainty to give until we talk more internally.
I understand. Thank you.
Would add to what Cheryl had discussed and circle back on Zara's recommendation when they presented on the slide of speaking before the commission, coming before the commissioners, the PUC commissioners, and kind of sharing those thoughts. I think that would be a very kind of effective and powerful, voice and avenue. And so, to continue to take steps to do that, hopefully.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was scheduled to do that and had a presentation ready for the next voting meeting, but I'm not allowed to do that without the vote.
Yeah, and we'll figure that piece out, Julia, and thank you, Zara and Vanessa, for that presentation, for that recommendation and then follow up. Cheryl, thank you for the information you provided. I mean, I think we still have here some follow up, right? I don't think we'll have all the answers today, but I'm happy that we're continuing the conversation because I do think we have an opportunity here, and how we move that forward, I think, is still something that we need to continue to explore as we continue. And and other DACAG members, please feel free to raise your hand if you have something to share here. But I'll just kind of close if there's no other comments here. I think about the role that we play as a DACAG, right? And the feedback that we provide and where we can in the limited time that we have to actually engage, how do we maximize, right, our thought leadership in this space to be able to guide, whether we're engaging directly on a proceeding or not, right? As this work moves forward. And, we are an advisory a group, right? Yet we are held to a higher standard. And so how do we make sure that our feedback is at that high standard as well, right? So, something for us to continue to discuss. But with that, if I'll just turn to DACAG members to see if y'all have anything else to add before I close the item. All right. Seeing none, well, thanks everyone for that discussion, and we'll come back to some of the outstanding issues here in a future presentation. Moving on then to item number 10, DACAG member, are we on item number 10? No, sorry, item number 9. DACAG member updates and priority areas. We'll turn it over to DACAG members to see if there have been any meetings with SMEs on these priority topics. Elena, go ahead.
So Stephanie and I, and then Chelsea, I don't know if you managed to have a follow-up meeting because I know you had connection issues. Had a meeting on the gas R&D budget plan just after the last DACAG meeting, outlining some of the initiatives that are under consideration, providing feedback. In terms of next steps, there will be a public workshop in December. I think that might be December 12th, although I can't remember. And they'll loop back with the DACAG next year with a more finalized plan for feedback. The topics under discussion were advancing innovation in low carbon manufacturing, gas decommissioning in mid and long term, pilot projects to advance gas decommissioning, network geothermal heat pumps, geothermal district heating, which I will say I thought was awesome, air quality next to industrial facilities, healthy and equitable gas decarb, and the role of hydrogen in hard to electrify markets. And we brought up both things that we thought were cool and exciting, as well as, concerns related to public health, hydrogen adoption, and many of the other issues that we have talked about here on the DACAG. I have a second update, and Mona can tell me whether or not this was officially DACAG or not, but I met with Commissioner McAllister earlier this week on discussing alignment between building decarb programs and achieving public health goals and public health systems, and what some of the opportunities might be there as well. And that's it.
Thanks, Elena. Any other updates? Okay, hearing none. I know we're in the process of trying to schedule a couple, so they didn't happen this past month, but we are trying to schedule one regarding transportation electrification with the Energy Commission on the Clean Transportation Investment Plan. Again, that didn't happen this past month, and we're hoping to do that within this next month, and then provide an update during the next priority topic. During our next meeting, during this priority area updates. I will note that one thing that I'm hoping that we can do with these topic areas moving forward as well is both give the updates around, the subject matter expert meetings that we're having, but then also because we have these topic areas, to also utilize potentially our priority topics as a way to outline what proceedings and dockets are active that we want to flag. So I know that's something we've been talking about, but I wanted to share and just get a temperature check from you all, whether you thought that might be helpful, right? To both be able to provide updates on conversations we're having, but then also flag any existing proceedings or dockets that are related to our priority areas for both ourselves, but then also for anyone listening in. Okay, I'm seeing some head nodding, some thumbs up. Right. Okay. So we'll work with staff to try to have that, and I think some of that is already included in the newsletter that we get sent out, but maybe having that also show up here would be helpful. Okay. With that, then we'll close item number 9 and we'll move on to item number 10. Providing DACAG members provide updates on the LIOB. Looks like we have actually staff joining us from the who provide a presentation on the item. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks. This is Ankit Jain. I'm the supervisor for the rate discount section in Energy Division. I'm joined today by Jen Gordon, who's the ED liaison to the Low Income Oversight Board, as well as Kapil Kulkarni in the Energy Efficiency Branch, who works on the ESA program. We were originally asked to provide kind of an overview of the LIOB, its scope and its structure, and then talk a little bit about opportunities for greater coordination with the DACAG. Given that we're running a little bit behind schedule and there seems to be particular interest in the ESA program, kind of the current state of the ESA program and some updates from the most recent LIOB meeting, we're going to, we provided the materials regarding the LIOB overview and coordination, which you're welcome to review and connect with us separately. But we're going to skip directly to the discussion about the ESA program. So I'm going to hand it over to Kapil. Kapil, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Ankit. Hi, everyone. Kapil Kulkarni with Energy Division, lead for the Energy Savings Assistance Program. I'll try and get through this in about less than 10 minutes and leave time for any questions or comments. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So just some quick background on the ESA program and how it fits in with the other income qualified programs. To qualify for ESA or FARA, with ESA, you need to have a household income of less than 250% of the federal poverty guidelines. That's about $78,000 for a family of 4. For ESA, it's a very narrow band between 200 and 250%. But if you do qualify for FARA, you automatically qualify for ESA. Similarly with CARE, the qualification is less than 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. So that's about $62,000 for a family of 4. And also if you qualify for CARE, you also qualify for ESA. So the bill discounts for CARE and FARA in combination with the energy savings and bill savings from ESA can provide a meaningful impact for customers who qualify for 2 or 3 or 1 or 2 of these programs. Next slide. In 2021, the Commission authorized a new decision for the ESA program, moving away from a volumetric goal that was established in 2008 and expired at the end of 2020, and established new goals for the program cycle starting in 2021 and going through 2026. So the old model was for the IOUs to treat as many homes as they could and to reach out to all the eligible homes that were out there. The new model is more focused on targeted treatment and determining the homes that should be prioritized, whether they are in disadvantaged communities or in certain climate zones, or have previously been disconnected or experiencing financial issues, and try and achieve up to 50% savings per home through a variety of kind of program components, including one for multifamily, one for the regular program for the majority of single family homes, but then one also, or others focused also on single family households where deeper savings could be achieved based on the characteristics of the home and customer behavior. Another reason that new goals were needed was because the savings that were resulting from the previous program design were about 1 to 5% from home. So compared to the benefits that could be achieved from the bill discount, the benefits of participating through ESA were not as significant and led to customers either not participating or not kind of lower customer satisfaction from participating due to the lower benefits. For a lot of these customers, the hassle of participating did not, in terms of taking the time off during the day or having to experience multiple contractor visits, was not worth the long-term benefits. So in 2021, the decision that the CPUC passed moved away from households treated towards portfolio energy savings, including an emphasis on deeper savings per home. So this led to a $400 million annual budget for ESA, savings goals for kilowatt hours, kilowatts, and therms, and also a target of treating 200,000 homes per year, which was a step down from the previous level that was about $300,000 per home, but doing more per home with fewer homes and targeting those homes as well. Next slide. As Rahman mentioned before, there is a long kind of ramp required to do contracting and solicitations. This process took about 1.5 years for the IOUs, starting in June 2021 through early 2023. So the numbers I'm showing here are kind of the first year of program implementation based on this new design. There was also an open and competitive bidding process, the onboarding of implementers and dozens of contractors and subcontractors, which led to kind of 2022 being a transition year and 2023 being the first full year. So based on that, the IOUs collectively achieved about 65% of the goal for energy savings for kilowatt hours, or megawatt hours, megawatts, and therms. They achieved about 75% of the homes treated target. So I think there was possibly some difficulties in transitioning from the previous goal of homes treated to now being a target and really looking for those energy savings opportunities. The utilities spent about 77% of the $292 million budget for 2023. But we did see an increase in first year bill savings per household from the ESA program, $21 for San Diego and their milder climate, and up to $116 for PG&E in their various climate zones. And this was an increase of about 25 to 30% from the 2022 program year. So while there was a lot of progress in 2023 and the utilities have increased their activity in 2024, there is still more work to be done to meet the annual goals as well as the program cycle goals. Next slide. So a lot of these issues are discussed at the kind of bi-monthly ESA working group meeting, which focuses more on implementation and maybe a little less on policy as compared to the quarterly LAOB meetings. And so we did discuss some of the guidance that we're looking to develop for the next program cycle. And I wanted to provide an update on that, given that staff is currently working with the IOUs as well as the LAOB, and one of the committees that the LAOB set up, the Technical Advisory Committee, to further refine this guidance before providing it to the utilities. As I mentioned before, the current program cycle expires in 2 years at the end of 2026. But of course, it takes time for staff and the PUC to approve guidance to provide to the utilities. It takes about 6 months for the IOUs to submit applications based on the guidance, and then about 12 to 15 months for the CPUC to authorize the decision and incorporate testimony from stakeholders and as well as from workshops and other activity to approve goals and budgets for the next program cycle, which starts in 2027. So, given this timeline and the amount of activity, this puts us right at the end of the cycle in 2026. So we want to make sure we start on that guidance now, as well as make considerations for bridge funding, which is kind of temporary funding that allows the IOUs and contractors to continue delivering the program in continuation of the current cycle towards the next cycle. Next slide. So here's kind of an overview of that time frame. We want to make sure that we continue on the goals that were established in the last cycle in terms of energy savings, but then also moving the IOUs towards developing a more customer-centric ESA program and leveraging in coordination with other programs, including the federally funded programs that we heard about earlier, the Equitable DCAR program, programs that are offered by Community Services Development Department, as well as other CPUC programs such as self-generation incentive, solar and multifamily affordable housing, and the DACAG program. So our goal would be to build off these efforts, combine all this input into specific concrete ideas, and by the time of our next LIOB quarterly meeting in December, provide a more detailed update to them. And so my ask of the DACAG here today would be to determine what input you would want to have in the next ESA decision and coordinate either with me or other staff, as well as with your LIOB counterparts, as well as the parties that typically make up that are part of the ESA Care FERA proceeding. That's the majority of my presentation. I have a couple of minor updates on the concurrent application system, and the potential and goal study, as well as the low-income needs assessment study. But I'll pause here and I guess use the rest of the presentation as more of an appendix.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Before I open it up just for any questions or comments in the DACAG, I'll just quickly see if there's any public comment. I don't think we have a slide for it, but still want to pause and see in case there is any public comment on it.
The DACAG will now accept public comments on this item. Please raise your hand either in the room or you press *3 on the phone to mute and unmute. Seeing nothing in the room, I'll check the WebEx. Seeing nothing, back to you. Thank you,
Sarah. I appreciate it. Yeah, I don't have any specific feedback on the presentation itself. I think it's an item I've followed very broadly, not enough to be able to provide any direct feedback now, but I do really appreciate y'all coming and giving us this presentation. I think we've continued to kind of think about how we best coordinate with LIOB, and I'm really sad that I missed the meeting. It was here in San Diego, which is where I'm based out of, and I was out on vacation during those times. But definitely want to see how we can continue to coordinate. I guess one thing that I'll just flag for the DACAG is maybe something that we have a chance to review. And given that the next meeting is not till December, maybe we can figure out whether there's some feedback that we might want to provide and share with staff or with the LIOB directly as that December meeting comes up. So, but I'll turn it over to any other DACAG members to see if there's comments or questions. All right, seeing no hands. Yeah, well, thank you. There's also, as was mentioned, in the slide deck packet, an overview of the LIOB and its members. And its focus. I think they have less priority areas to some degree, right, than we do, and can, I think, really be more intentional about engaging on kind of these more implementation focused conversations than like we do on our higher level policy. So I think something that we should continue to explore, right, of our kind of balanced approach to both policy, but then implementation engagement. Definitely we'll be following up with you all on potential comments that we might have. And I believe the December meeting is in person in Oakland. So, I think if it aligns for folks, it might be good to potentially attend and be there. It so happens that like it's around our retreat, our staff retreat. So I might try to attend that.
Definitely, yeah, sounds good. We'll stay in touch about that upcoming meeting.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, we'll close item number 10 and move on to item number 11, which is CEC and CPUC staff agency updates. We'll start with the CEC.
Thank you, Roman. We have an update from CEC.
Hello, this is Mona again from the CEC. I wanted to announce that we're planning a kickoff hybrid workshop for Monday, October 7th. starting at 10. And this is for CEC's informational proceeding on non-energy benefits and social costs. It's the same proceeding that Dorothy referenced in her presentation, docket 24 OIIP 03. And we are fortunate to have already booked Roman to speak at the workshop. And we're going to make sure to include the notice for the workshop on our DACAG email subscription list. And we'll include it in the newsletter as well once that gets final approval and we post it. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have one more announcement. Let me find the unmute button for our colleague. Oh, there we go. We have Sebastian Ruiz from CEC.
Two announcements with you all today. Just a friendly reminder that the EPIC Symposium is coming up. This is the 10th annual symposium being held together in collaboration with PG&E, SE, and SDG&E. It's going to take place on October 28th, and it's going to be held in person in Sacramento, but it's also available virtually for those through Zoom. The agenda features a tribal plenary that's going to be focused on advancing energy resiliency and reliability and working together towards greater energy sovereignty. The registration is required, but it's free to join, and I'll drop the link in the chat shortly. And then the last announcement I wanted to share is that the deadline for the Community Energy Reliability and Resilience Investment Program was extended to Friday, October 11th, 2024. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sebastian. And then we will, we'll be sending out the newsletter later on today with updates that were mentioned here and a few more. Thank you so much, Aman. Back to you.
Thank you, Dorothy. I'll turn it over to the CPUC.
Pass it to my colleague, Megan Cook.
Hi, thank you, Zara. My name is Megan Cook, and I'm the climate adaptation analyst. I'm on Cheryl's team with the CPUC. And Cheryl alluded to this earlier in the meeting, but I wanted to provide some updates on the climate adaptation, community engagement, and equity workshop that we held yesterday in Sacramento. And so this was a workshop where we had participation from a lot of ESJ communities and CBOs, as well as local government and research groups, and a tribal participant as well. And so we gained a lot of insight on best practices around engagement when it comes to energy infrastructure and climate adaptation. And as Cheryl mentioned, some of the really key topics that we discussed in that workshop included barriers to engagement when it comes to, specifically when it comes to climate adaptation planning, although I think a lot of what we talked about is pretty universal. And so things that came up included limited funding, limited bandwidth, duplicative requests, as well as potential solutions to those issues. And these comments from this workshop will inform a subsequent staff proposal, and that will flow into an eventual decision within the climate adaptation proceeding. And some other dates to be aware of: we are planning to hold this same workshop in Southern California on Friday, October 25th. And that will go from 10 a.m. to 4:15 p.m. at the Quail Hill Community Center in Irvine. So that's something to put on your calendar. And we'll put out a notice closer to the date as well. And then we are also planning to host a technical workshop on November 20th at CPUC headquarters in San Francisco. And this will be much more focused on metrics for measuring climate vulnerability and adaptive capacity and community readiness when it comes to climate adaptation and energy infrastructure. And so we welcome participation from any community members, from DACAG members, or other subject matter experts, either as a DACAG member or as any other role that you occupy. And if you are interested, please do reach out through Zara. Zara has been helping me with these workshops and has been a huge help in planning them, so they can direct you for more information. But yeah, we look forward to offering you a presentation on the staff proposal once that's prepared. And that will be at the culmination of the stakeholder building process. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Is that all for updates?
Yes.
All right. Great. Thank you. Great. We'll then close item 11 and then move to item number 12, agenda setting and attendance. So this is an opportunity for folks to share any potential agenda items that we might want to bring up either for our upcoming meeting in October or in the future. So feel free to raise your hand and share potential agenda items. As you're thinking through that, I just wanted to share a couple of things. So our next meeting is Friday, October 18th. So just wanting to flag that. Hopefully, you'll all be able to join. But as we're getting close to the end of the year, I think we also have to start doing some planning for like the November and December meetings. In years past, our December meeting, we've moved it up, given that it's the third Friday of the month. It generally, it's close to the holidays and we start losing folks to vacation. So we might need to move that date up. So I think, we'll work with staff to potentially send out a survey to make sure that the remaining dates are still something that works. Maybe, outside of October, thinking about the November date and the December date. The other thing that I'll work with staff as well is, I think we definitely shifted over to the virtual meeting structure for DACAG. But I wanted to potentially see, right, if there was any interest in potentially having an in-person meeting. As y'all saw, the LIOB is hosting theirs in person. Where it's a hybrid approach, right? In person and then hybrid attendance is also an opportunity. But wanting to see, and we'll, you don't have to respond now, but maybe in the survey to see whether maybe the December meeting, right? Which the December meeting many times is not just like around the policy, it's more like administrative issue. I think we do like a Bagley Keen update, a refresher. We do a bunch of things that that is not always like policy related for December. So put out a feeler to see whether that might make sense for us to potentially have that be in person. So flagging it for you all as something to consider. But yeah, wanted to see if there's any thoughts on agenda specific items or anything that I shared around the dates and in-person meeting. All right. Seeing no hands, then expect a survey to come out to kind of get a sense of if that works for folks or not, and then what dates to have. All right. With that, we'll close item number 12 and move on to item number 13, general public comment. Turn it over to Zara for direct instructions.
Thank you. DACAG now welcomes public comments on this item. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 1 speaker per organization. We'll show a timer on the screen and we'll alert you when your time is up. All comments will become part of the public record. Please let us know if you would like to make a comment so we can call on you. For those on WebEx, please use the raise hand feature that looks like an open palm. For those joining by phone, please press *3 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute. For anyone in the room, please raise your hand. All commenters should spell your name and give your affiliation for the record and then share your comment. Seeing nothing in the room. Looking now to the chat. We have 1 raised hand in the chat. You can unmute now.
Matt Grigori, M-A-T-T. Last name is Grigori, G-R-E-G-O-R-I. I'm with SoCalGas. Just want to thank everybody. Great presentations, lots of information. I heard mention of a CEC newsletter at a couple points, and I just wanted to find out if that was a newsletter that was available to the public, and if so, could I get some information on how to subscribe? That's the end of my comment. Thank you.
Dorothy, do you want to respond?
Thank you, Zara. Thank you, Zara. And thank you, Matt, for the question. The newsletter itself is just us accumulating some information that's already publicly available, but we're accumulating that information, sending it to DACAG. Some items are based on their priority areas. So all this information is on either web pages or has been mentioned even today. So that's the information that goes out in the newsletter. So it's not a CEC based newsletter. So it's just quick. It's just, I guess, customized updates just for the DACAG members so they can be aware of the matters that are going on at either agency. So I hope that helps answer the question. It is not a publicly available document. It's just gathered information. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dorothy, for addressing that question. All right.
Yeah, no final questions on the WebEx.
Okay. Thank you, Zara. Appreciate it. All right. With that, then, let's proceed to close item 13. Move on to item number 14, adjournment. Yeah, thank you, everyone who participated today. A lot of information was shared. Great presentations, great discussion. Really appreciate y'all's participation. And so with that, we'll close today's meeting. Have a great rest of your evening and have a good weekend. And we'll talk to y'all soon. Take care.